Right back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell. This is Community Matters, and we're going to talk about agriculture. We talk about agriculture and how it affects your mental health. How about that? I bet you never expected that. But we care about all aspects of agriculture in Hawaii Day, and we have Alexis Kerver from Sitar to talk about it. We'll be right back for that purpose. Welcome to the show, Alexis. I wanted to be clear that whether you're faculty or student or farmer or all three.
All three. Actually, no longer a student anymore. I graduated.
Oh, congratulations. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
let's go right to the question at hand. How does farming affect your mental health and quality of life? Because, all the stories we've heard up to this point is get your hands dirty.
Unless you're a farmer yourself, what many people don't realize is that there's so much uncertainties that farmers have to deal with, aside from weather and pests that influence crop losses. There's also the additional stressors on top of those farm stressors that farmers have to deal with, like anybody else: family, children, financial issues. So the accumulation of stressors is a huge factor on the mental health. A lot of them go out of the farming industry because it gets too much where they can't make a profit. The return on investment in farming, it takes a while to be able to get there. So there are resources available from USDA, HDOA, CTAR, but the resources are limited. And so there isn't a ton of assistance, especially on the financial side, without adding more stress for these farmers. And so oftentimes you'll see, especially with our younger farming population, they will start and then they end up leaving the industry. And that's an issue. If we want to increase our food production goals by 2030 is the state's ambitious goal, we need to be able to invest in a younger generation of farmers.
Yeah. So what you said, resources, and you mentioned financial resources. What other kind of resources are there that play in this picture?
Sure. There's things like the small farm loans and startup loans, and HDOA provides and Go Farm. So there's like smaller organizations like Go Farm, for instance, that have a starting farmer experience or internship, where if you complete a program with them, then you get a parcel of, an acre or two to do your farming operations, and you have a community of support. And then there's like small farm loans from USDA, HDOA with very low interest that can help with operational cost and land acquisitions. But often, farmers are limited when it comes to that point because there's so many eligibility requirements that you have to meet in order to qualify for those loans. So it sounds like it's super accessible and easy for folks to access that financial help, but there's still a lot of extra steps.
Sounds like bureaucracy to me.
Sounds like bureaucracy, indeed.
So what kind of requirements could that be? I'm not sure why you have a lot of requirements. You would have a lot of requirements, but what would they be? What do I have to cope with?
So, for instance, I'm a farmer myself. And so when I reached out to HDOA in hopes to get a land acquisition loan, but because there was an unpermitted structure on almost every one of the properties that I was interested in. I mean, here, especially on the Big Island and more of the rural islands, I'm not too familiar with Oahu. Everywhere has unpermitted structures in Hawaii. And, that so they won't give any loans out to land with unpermitted structures. There's also, one of the biggest ones is an income. Your income has to be 3 to 4 times higher than what you're making. And so anybody that's going into farming, very unlikely unless you already have upfront cost and a large set of finances set aside, very unlikely to meet that income requirement. Those are the two that come to my head.
Well, that's quite enough, actually. Those are serious impediments. Right. I remember one of the grossest thing was You couldn't live on the land. And that goes to these unpermitted structures. I think they don't want you to live on the land. They want you to live somewhere else. So you have to spend your money on housing elsewhere instead of on investing in the farm, which is really a way of saying we don't really want you to farm. And the other point you mentioned, which is equally a handicap, is that you have to have other income. If you have to have other income, you have to have another job, don't you? And if you have to have another job, how are you going to spend the time on the farm to make the farm work? Farming is not easy by any analysis. So those two requirements really make it inaccessible to most people who would like to farm. Am I right?
You're right. Nailed it on the head.
Oh, it's sad, that the state used to have all this big capital sunk into the plantations, and now the plantations are waiting out the condominium market. They don't want to deploy the land into farming anymore. It's really sad. I could name names about these big, plantations, and they're working against agriculture in the state. And the Department of Agriculture doesn't really have any options. And so, little by little, we're losing our workforce. So let's go to you, for example, Alexis. Why in the world, let me repeat that, why in the world would you do this? It sounds really, really unattractive.
There's a few reasons for me, one of which I think a lot of other farmers relate with is that it's a generational life that my family, I come from a family of farmers here in Hawaii. So my grandfather was a coffee farmer. My uncle is a fruit tree and coffee farmer. And so it's a passion just because I want to be able to continue that practice. And I know that a lot of other farmers relate to that. They come from a long line of farmers. And so it's being able to pass down these practices. The other is the lifestyle, and that's another reason why people want to get into farming is that how ideal you can live off the land, grow food, not have to clock in and out of a job, and just be able to supply food to your community and for yourself. It's for someone like me, it's an ideal situation.
Let me see your hands. Hold them up right in front of you.
I got Band-Aids.
Fingernails.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I think I made my point. But okay, you're talking about, you're relatively young, and you have a family behind you, such as it is. And I don't want to tell you anything you don't know, but you're going to get older, Alexis. Watch that work.
Don't tell me that.
Sorry, I mentioned it. And as you get older, your hands don't work as well, and you can't put in those long hours. And although you want to serve humanity and serve food to people, there's really nothing finer, really, than serving food to people. Isn't it true? A lot of people go into restaurants for the same reason, but they ultimately go bust in the restaurants. And so do you see yourself continuing for a, quote, career, career, a career in this, or is this going to get old after a while?
No, this is the career. This is the path that I'm dedicated to. So the goal is to be able to, I'm faculty with UHC-TAR. And I also work for a nonprofit. So I'm working 2 jobs in addition to starting up my farm business. And so, the goal is to be able to farm permanently and just 100% and not have to work other jobs. But that's another aspect of farming that can be a challenge, especially with young farmers, is that there's a whole business side to it. You have to know how to market your product. You have to know what is in demand and exports and market prices. There's a lot more than just growing the food. You can know everything about the soil and the food itself, but if you don't know how to get your food out there and into the stores, I personally don't feel it's realistic to rely on farmers markets full time. You don't always sell all of your crops, and then you're left with a bunch of crops that will end up going bad. So there's so much to it. And, the average age of a farmer in Hawaii is 60 years old. So that's referred to here in Hawaii. We call that the graying of agriculture. And the problem is not that we don't have farmland. It's that we don't have farmers. We don't have people that are no longer interested in getting into this industry because people know it's not profitable. People know it takes a lot of work. What people don't realize is all the additional mental health challenges that come with that. We had a recent needs assessment survey that tried to understand who is stressed out, why they're stressed out, and what the status is of our farmers. So we sent it out to 408 farmers across the state, which is a huge response compared to a similar California study. They only had 200 respondees. So 408, and 48% of the respondents reported experienced depression, and 14% struggle with suicidal thoughts.
Whoa, wow.
That's huge.
It is.
It's huge.
So what makes farming so depressing? Is it the things you mentioned, or is it something else, or a combination of those things and something else? I mean, that's really a bad demographic that you describe, because you can't enjoy your life,
Right.
with all the depression and suicidal possibilities. So what is it that makes farming worse than the norm?
So our survey had a series of questions, and one of which was trying to understand those stressors and identify them. The top stressor that was reported was uncertainty. So uncertainty could be uncertain of the finances that are going to come in. So if a farmer lives on a homestead and has 5 children and isn't sure if he's going to be able to feed his family with the crops that he makes, or even be able to afford rent that month, in addition to bringing in income for the farm and generating, there's also added expenses with infrastructure, all your equipment, all your inputs. So, the financial uncertainty. There's also, again, the things that we can't control with weather uncertainties. We've been seeing that recently, these giant floods that come in, they wipe out a whole taro farmer's whole entire kalo patch, and they have to restart from scratch. So, there's so much uncertainty in farming, and some things that we can build and develop better resources for, some things that are out of our control. But, I think with our project, Seeds of Wellbeing, our main goal is to bring awareness to these things so that there's more, I guess you could say, sympathy, or just more care for the farmer, just more awareness to what a farmer has to go through, so that there's built appreciation for the person that's growing your food. And also our goal is to build a community, build more community and destigmatize conversations of mental health, so that farmers have, also in our survey, we found that farmers are more likely to go to a close friend or a family member rather than going to a health professional if they're experiencing depression or suicidal thoughts. And that doesn't surprise me, because here in Hawaii, we have a very ohana community culture. And so establishing a tighter community that is focused around conversations of mental health hopefully can give folks more access to resources, or a willingness to seek out resources for mental health support.
Have you had mental health issues?
Me, myself, yes. I've gone through a series of depression, and just recently I blame it on grad school, to be honest. Grad school was extremely difficult for me.
So farming over here, grad school over there. Okay.
Yeah, my master's was in environmental policy. So, when you are someone like me that just has so much passion for change and mobilization to, make Hawaii better and more sustainable, but you're constantly faced against all these bureaucratic holes and walls, it gets very frustrating. So, that was prior to grad school. I had never experienced depression. And so that's why I also know that it's very hard to sympathize with someone who's experiencing mental health challenges if you've never gone through it yourself.
Why are you teaching it, Sita?
I don't teach. I'm the site facilitator. So I do the curriculum, help with the curriculum development for mental health literacy. I'm also the coordinator for our mental health mentorship program. So we have 34 mentors now across the islands that are all trained in suicide prevention, stress management, and coping strategies. So I do a lot of that. I used to teach kindergarten, though.
Okay. So I have so many questions for you. The nonprofit you mentioned, what is the nonprofit?
Yeah, that's Kona Historical Society. So that's my work of passion as well. It doesn't pay me a lot, but it's a community hub. So the Historical Society, we house on site the history of Kona and store oral stories, family histories. And so people come to us seeking information. We also have a large farm, over a 2-acre farm, coffee farm that we manage. And so I assist with that. And then we have a native forest. And so I assist with the management of the native forest.
No way to get your time. Huh.
Yeah, time is an illusion. You
Yeah, I
create
know.
time.
A busy person has time for everything, right?
Of course.
So let me drill down in a slightly different area, and that is the solution. The solution. Okay, one is, and you can respond and tell me I'm all wet, or you can say, well, that's an interesting idea. Number one is, it seems to me that you don't have so much mental stress if you have a partner. If you have a family living on the farm, I would imagine that a person trying to farm alone is under tremendous stress. But if that person has a partner, a spouse, whatever, that spouse, that person is going to be in better shape. So it should be incumbent on us all, if we care about farming, to make sure everybody is happy in their homestead. Am I right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. The next question is, it seems to me that Sitar is teaching, or should be teaching, technology in farming. And technology, there's tons of technology going on. And I think just looking at it as the third person from the outside in, we're all fascinated with the climate, with the resources, the agricultural resource, that is the quality of the soil and the seasons and the rain and the sun, all those things. But in fact, where agriculture is going, you can agree or disagree, is to high-tech farming, vertical farming, indoors. I know that Sitar has a bunch of hothouse, structures where they grow stuff indoors. We made a movie about that, as a matter of fact. And isn't the future there? Requires less land, requires less water, and probably less work. And it's more efficient. The growing season is more efficient. The predictability of the crop is more efficient. Aren't we going there? And why aren't we going there, full steam ahead?
Yeah, I'd say that's a somewhat of a controversial question. It could be answered from a few different perspectives. On one end, regarding predictability, and utilizing the resources, like you said, there's a lot of technology out there for us to be taking advantage of. Precision agriculture is a huge advancement, with the drones being able to track growth and also being able to distribute the inputs and also being able to distribute the seeds. That's very, very helpful for a large scale farmer. There's another side that comes to my mind personally, of that connection to the land is part of the farming. So again, going back to the lifestyle, being able to be outside and working with the plants one-on-one and getting your hands in the soil and coming home at night with, your fingernails are covered. And that's a big part of the farming lifestyle that I think, many farmers, not all, because there's many different styles of farming. But many farmers here in Hawaii, or maybe smaller scale farmers, that's part of the lifestyle that they're trying to pass down to the next generations, to their children, is that intimate connection and relationship with the land. So yes, in regards to feasibility and where we're headed with climate change, having the ability to be able to produce crops indoors in greenhouses or vertical growing, these are definitely things that we should be looking at to at least balance. Because again, the issue isn't farmland. If we were to get rid of all of our farmland, that also has climate implications, because our farmland is also a carbon repository. So it's also sucking carbon from the atmosphere. So if we develop on that farmland, we're not doing anything good for the climate anyways. So it's not a matter of not having farmland, right? So that's why there's there's a lot of different sides to that question, I think.
You
We
know,
could talk for
10,
hours about
10
it.
years ago, Alexis, we ThinkTech had a downtown forum program about agriculture. We brought in a lot of people in from the department. We brought in a lot of farmers and all kinds of people who were interested in agriculture. And at the end of the program, good program. At the end of the program, somebody taps me on the shoulder, and it's this very wealthy Silicon Valley tech success guy. And he says, "Gee, I really enjoyed that. I have a hui, and we want to invest in agriculture in Hawaii. Introduce me to everybody you know." So I did. I took him around. Everybody I knew a lot of people at the time who were then engaged in agriculture one way or another. And he spent, several trips out here. He met with everybody that I introduced him to. And then he took me out to the Halekulani for our closing dinner. And he said, "Well, my hui and I, we have looked over the field. We have talked to everybody that we could find. And we have decided we're going to invest in hotels."
Hmm.
And I was just totally crushed. And I said to myself, "Gee, what a fantastic mistake. He's only looking at the bottom line. He's only looking on a return on investment. He's not looking at whether this would help Hawaii in any way." And I was really disappointed after that effort and where he said he was, going. But that's the issue I want to ask you about. Where are the big boys here? Where are the guys with the big checkbooks? Where are the investors who would, form corporations and have mergers and acquisitions? Where are the guys who can buy 10,000 acres, buy it, and then, bring in
Hire people to
entrepreneurs?
do it. Yeah.
Where are they?
They're investing in other industries. Like you said, I think when we have a lot of outside perspective come into Hawaii, they see opportunity for development. They see a lot of vacant land. And so I think, more often than not, their first thought is, oh, I could put a hotel here. Oh, we can build a neighborhood or, whatever whole housing structures in a lot of this area. That's a great question. I don't know where they are, and I don't know why they don't see the potential of farming. So maybe that is also part of the solution, is bringing more awareness to the positive benefits, especially here in Hawaii, especially being in the middle of the Pacific, where we rely still to this day, 80 to 90% of our food is imported. We live on an island in the middle of the Pacific with all these climate change disasters and unprecedented events happening. We never know when those imports will stop. And so self-reliance and food sovereignty is very important. And so that is an opportunity for an investor, because there's a need for that and there's a want for that. There's a whole movement around it.
Now, maybe it's coming, but it won't come until we have a crisis. There's a movie I want to refer you to, Alexis. It's called Triangle of Sadness or something along those lines. Woody Harrelson in the movie. It's a very interesting movie, and it's about a ship, a yacht with all these very rich people, and the yacht somehow sinks or is stolen or something, and they're all left on a beach to fend for themselves. But they don't know how to catch a fish. They don't know how to grow anything. The only person who knows anything about it is a woman at the bottom of the pole, the social pole, and she's on the staff, the crew of the ship. And they come to her and say, "Oh, you have to help us grow food because otherwise we'll starve." And she said, "Yeah, but I want to be elected captain right now. I'm not doing anything for you in your crisis because I know how to grow food. I can eat, but I'm not doing anything for you." And it's like Lord of the Flies in reverse. And there's a very interesting concept where people have, sort of shoved off from the notion of being responsible for the food supply. They don't care. Somebody else will do it. The people at the bottom of the heap will do it. This is not acceptable. And so, I suggest to you that you have to have a crisis before you reach that level of awareness, before you say, wait a minute, relying 90% of our food from the mainland, this is not workable in a crisis, either extreme weather or some other effect of climate change. Hey, we have got to be more resilient than that. But you don't know that until you have a really bad experience.
Yeah, same thing, going back to the experiencing depression, and you don't really understand it unless you've gone through it. I think the same case here. Until those personnel are not able to access food from the grocery store, the people with money that live here that can't access food because imports have been shut off, then they'll understand the importance of growing food and food sovereignty.
Yeah.
But hopefully we don't, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Hopefully we're able to change that paradigm.
Well, I think right now, if we had a bad storm and those ships couldn't come in, you could say, elect me captain, otherwise no food.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like those movies are actually foretelling. Those types of movies, are foretelling what's to come.
So Donovan Dela Cruz, our favorite senator in the state Senate, he's into agriculture and he's into building infrastructure in the way of common infrastructure that will help the farmers. And he's got a big project going on in West Oahu. So the question I put to you is the state doing enough? Is the Department of Agriculture doing enough?
No, it's not. What is your guess? How much of the state's budget do you think is allocated to agriculture?
I already know because we made a movie about this. 1%. 1%.
It's less than 1%. It's 0.30% of the state's budget goes to agriculture. Yet the state also portrays that they have a sustainability development goal in congruence with the United Nations to increase local food production by 2030. It doesn't make sense. So no, I don't think they're doing enough.
No,
I have hope, but no.
Well, when this big storm comes and the ships can't come around with 90% food, and members of the legislature come to you, Alexis, and they say, can you give me some food? Say, oh, you were in the legislature? I'm not so sure you should have food. You never supported agriculture. So you go to that side of the room. Okay, but I hope you remember that.
Yes, I will remember that. And I think knowing your farmers, knowing your especially the Kanakamoli farmers, they are true stewards of this Aina, and farming is not something that's separate from them. So, you better know your neighbor and know him well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't, there are people who have these little towers and put them on their lanai, and I don't think you can live on that. I'm sorry. But what's the demographic? In other words, how many farmers are there in the state, full-time farmers or arguably full-time farmers, because a lot of them have to have a day job. And of them, how many Native Hawaiians are farmers? Can you talk to me about that?
Sure. And I don't think that we have the accurate data on that because we don't often get a lot of response for valid reasons from the Native population. According to our recent publication, I believe it was around 700 full-time farmers in the state. And of those, the most depressed, because that's what we were getting data on, the most depressed are the East Asian population of farmers. We have a large demographic of farmers here because people come from all over the world to farm. So we have a lot of Portuguese farmers. We have, Filipino farmers, Spanish, non-speaking English farmers as well that come here for the opportunity to farm. We don't have an exact number on.
But it's subsistence, isn't it? If they had a medical license, they wouldn't be farming. They're coming here because the weather's good, the rainfall is good, the soil is good. Not because there are other options for them. It's something they know. So they come here because they think it will, allow them to subsist. It's not enough. Yeah, let me give you a hypothetical, okay? So there's extreme weather. All of a sudden, farmers become more important. So when they're not in competition with cheap produce from the West Coast, or for that matter, the West Coast may lose its ability to grow produce because of the drying up of the Columbia River Basin, of course, and South America, the same possibility. Okay, so now local farmers, they can grow the food in our special resources, and they're not in competition, so the prices of produce go up all of a sudden. Okay, and now they're making money. Now they can get bank loans. Now they can get land under that very difficult land arrangement you described. Um, Now, instead of making, I don't know, $25,000 a year from their subsistence farm, they're making $100,000 a year from their farm. Okay, will they still be depressed and suicidal?
It's possible. So there's still the uncertainty factors of crop loss and weather. There's certain uncontrollable factors, and that was still rated as the highest stressor according to our survey of 400 farmers. So it is possible. I think that the more equipped farmers and anybody, not just farmers, but people in general, the more equipped we are to be able to face the normal and natural stresses of life, the more resilient we can be as they happen. And I think that that's just a society. It's more of a society
Oh yeah,
thing.
it
It's
goes
just
beyond. The total demographic of people who are depressed is much greater. Okay, one last area I want to cover with you, and that extends from Senator Donovan Dela Cruz. What about co-ops? What about maternalistic organizations that take care of farmers, where you have a market. You don't have to go to the swap meet to sell your produce, and the market is regular on both sides. In other words, it gives you consistency, a consistent price, and opportunity to sell. God, I could talk about the ferry now, but I won't. And it gives the restaurants and the markets an opportunity to buy predictably, whatever they want, their requirements. So if I have that, I take away a lot of this uncertainty, don't I? Somebody should do this. I mean, what is so complicated about forming a co-op?
It's a lot of work because then you're dealing with a lot of different people that you have to keep on the same page. And so again, going back to our average age of our farmer here in Hawaii is 60 years old. When I have spoken with some of these farmers, they don't want to go out and have to interact with people. They just want to grow the food and hand the food off and get it to the market. There's a lot of extra commitment that comes with being involved in a co-op. However, it is a step forward. It has a lot of potential, especially here in Hawaii, where again, we're very community orientated. So already having that sense of community, building a co-op with a focus of agriculture in our small communities is huge. It's very, very beneficial. And when you look at other places in the world, we do have a lot of established co-ops. And so it is to our advantage to, invest more time into that. But it's it's getting everybody on the same page and on board with wanting to work together.
Yeah, well, we care a lot, but we may not be good at that. So, okay, here's my question about me. I always have to ask a question about me. What can I do, Alexis? Don't tell me I should go to a farmer's market. Don't tell me I should, have a lot of talk shows about agriculture. Believe me, I would. And if you ever want to, come back, I would like to have you back because I want to talk about agriculture as much as possible. Not only these, familial things and the mental state of mind things, but about building the industry. What can I do as an ordinary schmo? What can I do? And the answer is probably something like not going to the restaurants that serve it or, making remarks to the waiter in the restaurant. That doesn't do anything. It's something like I subscribe. If you look at the advertising on the mainland or everywhere, you can go online and you can buy food and the guy brings it to your door. And now, you haven't had to go to the market. Why can't I subscribe for local produce in the very exact same way? And in subscribing, I'm helping.
Yep, you can. And that's a great answer. I think you answered your own question there. So if you're on Oahu, there's farms like Ma'o Organic Farm, which is our largest organic farm in the state. They have produce boxes that you can subscribe to and they deliver it to your door. So that is a great way to support a farmer. Another way, again, because our project is focused on the mental well-being, the inner well-being of farmers, and to support that, is also to reach out to your local farmer, reach out to the folks that are growing your food and thank them. Thank them directly and tell them how much you love your produce. And, little comments like that can go a long way for a farmer.
What can they do to get my attention? I worry about what is that special thing on the Big Island, rat lung
lungworm.
And if you don't keep your produce clean, you run the risk of that. And and other issues around quality that may concern me. And so if I go to the food market, the big market, I don't worry about that so much. But if I get it directly from a farmer, I'm not so sure that it isn't a rat lungworm. So what can the industry do to give me confidence in it?
First of all, I think there's a misconception with getting your produce from a big store isn't subjected to those same types of diseases. There's recalls on lettuce all the time for overexposure of E. coli. So I think that there is a misconception there that just because you're getting your produce from a big store doesn't mean that it doesn't have something wrong with it. So I think just regular on a consumer level, just habits of washing your produce no matter what. You don't also know how much pesticides they sprayed on it, and you don't want to ingest that anyways. My grandfather's old school and he doesn't care to rinse his grapes. It doesn't matter if they say organic or not. He just eats them. But it's probably a good practice always to rinse your food anyways. On an industry level, too much regulation isn't necessarily a positive thing for the farmer. It's more steps and more money that they have to go.
I couldn't agree more. And sometimes the government is so invasive and obnoxious in the way it doesn't care about people and puts you through the hoops for silly bureaucratic reasons.
And the farmer doesn't want to jeopardize their ability to have a relationship with the consumers and have their produce be able to be out there. So if farmers were more supported and just had the basic resources that they need, such as probably health insurance, like a MedQuest for farmers, or just more financial resources and business opportunities, then they'll probably have more time to invest and put into the infrastructure and the practice to be able to prevent those things from ever happening. It becomes less of an issue if they're able to be on the farm more and put more practices in place to find do whatever they need to do to maintain and control the worms or the rats.
Well, there could be a trade association. I don't know if there is, but a trade association has said this farmer, we know this farmer has been reliable. This farmer keeps a clean house, whatever it is. And we're going to give them a stamp of approval. So when you buy your subscription from this farmer, you can have a certain level of confidence because it's a trade association, not the government, but a trade association. I really like that idea. If it ever comes
that's
up.
A good idea.
Yeah. Okay, time for you to leave your message. Go ahead. Leave your message. Leave your message for the people.
Know your farmer. Don't just support them and buy their food, but know your farmers. Reach out to them. Thank your farmers. And that's really the main message that I want to get across.
It reminds me of a little thing we had back in the aught years, a bumper sticker that said, have you hugged your researcher today? And that referred to technology, but I suppose you could have a similar a bumper sticker that says, "Have you hugged your farmer today?"
You never, there is a bumper sticker in Hawaii that I see all the time on cars that says, "Know your farmer, know your food."
Hence your final remarks. Okay, Alexis Kerver, it's been really fun, and I'm so glad we had this conversation. Aloha to you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.